Hey everyone.
Good morning or afternoon if you're on the East Coast. I'm Natasha.
I'm Allegra.
And
together we are Beyond Your Wildest Dreams.
Or BYWD, as we like to shorten things up and keep things succinct. And we are here. Our mission is to help you prioritize yourself, save time, and help you achieve your goals. That's our stated mission, and we're here every Thursday morning at 9:30 a.m. Pacific and 12:30 Eastern, just to chat with you every week, check in, see how things are going. Feel free to always comment. We always read the comments, respond to you. We want to hear what's going on in your world as well, and we talk all things parenting, planning. Mostly those are the two topics we talk about, but we do cover other stuff too. We just basically talk about what's going on in our life. And we also talk about ways that you can learn to help prioritize yourself, because we're on that prioritizing journey ourselves, and saving time and achieving our goals.
Yeah, because we know how easy it is when you're a working mom to take care of everyone else and maybe not leave enough time for yourself. And then you're feeling run down and it becomes kind of this vicious cycle. And every week we chit chat a little bit about what's going on in our life. And then we have a topic. Today's topic is kind of a fun, light topic. Something we've never talked about before, which is our baby making story.
Yeah, not the birth story, totally different. The making.
Oh, we're going to have to add that because my birth story was dramatic.
I feel like almost everybody I know has some dramatic, if not sometimes / traumatic birth story.
Yes.
Although, there's a handful of people just like easy breezy.
Well, I feel like traumatic is assumed within the dramatic.
Within the dramatic, yeah.
I mean,
absolutely.
And everything turned out fine, right? But it definitely didn't feel great while it was happening. Mm-hmm. So, and then for those of you who haven't joined us before, Natasha and I do have these wonderful quick read books. This one was a bestseller on Amazon right next to, what's his name? John. Oh my gosh, I can't believe I'm blanking on his name.
Oh, that productivity guy, right?
Yeah, the leadership expert.
That's right, not productivity.
John, it'll come to me. And Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. It was amazing to see our book.
That's right.
Kareem Abdul-Jabbar and John Blank, like the 10 Laws of Leadership. Okay, anyway, I could Google it. And each of these books is designed to be read in less than an hour. And they're actually workbooks, because Natasha and I, with our decades of experience as educators, know that you learn best when you actually apply the information and not just theoretically, think about it. So, Natasha and I were planning on chit-chatting about the countdown to the new school year, because we are 3 weeks away for us before our kiddos.
Countdown. We're solidly in the countdown. Yep.
Yeah. Well, really, not even 3 weeks, right? 2 weeks and 2 days away.
Yeah, it's less than 3 weeks. Exactly. When you said that, I was like, wow, we have 3 weeks, really? But no, it's less than that for sure. Mm-hmm.
2 weeks and 2 days. And actually even less than that, because the week before school, they have all the registration and orientation and tours. So it's not like you can really, go on a trip or even spend the day at the zoo or the beach or something. It's really got to be prepared to go to school to do the tours and the registrations. But when we were backstage before we hit go on this live, we started talking about how 2024, there's just been a lot of commotion, either travel or big birthdays or, camping trips, which I guess you could file under travel. And I feel like I haven't had any sort of continuity for more than 2 weeks. And Natasha, apparently, you're feeling similarly.
Yeah, very similar. Because, there's been a lot of things that have disrupted. And even I was away for traveling for 3 weeks. And for 2 of those 3 weeks, I kind of found like a mini morning routine / ritual. But then the last half of that, the last week of that travel was, we moved again. We went to friend's house, and it just got thrown off. And I feel like I've been home for back in LA for 2 weeks. And I'm just behind the 8 ball. Just really things that have been really part of a routine easily have been like thrown off, because there's just a lot of like, the good thing about the school year is that it's structured, right? At least,
Mhm. Yeah.
and so the thing about summer sometimes is like, woohoo, yay. But then also, which is great for your kids if that's what they get to like mess around, but for the rest of us who have to like still kind of keep that forward momentum going, not having that routine or that ritual in place feels off. Anybody else? Like raise your hand. Anybody else feel like summer's great,
Totally.
but man, you're out of your depths or out of your element, or you just feel like you're playing catch up.
Yeah, feel free to comment below, or if you're watching the recording, comment. I definitely feel a little out of sorts when I don't get to lock into, especially my morning ritual. When I don't get to lock into my morning ritual, my whole day just feels a little bit out of sorts. And a little bit too with the evening ritual, although not as dramatic. And I think it's because
Hmm.
your morning ritual sets the tone for your whole day. And if you're
Right.
like playing catch up right from the get-go, you kind of never lose that feeling.
100%.
And so today I was feeling really conscientious about I'm going to do my whole morning ritual. And usually when I'm in a good flow, I don't even have to think about it. It's a
Yes.
habit. It
Right.
automatically
That's the
clicks
thing,
in.
y'all, about morning ritual and getting it established, right? Is that it is a habit. You're not using brain power, but yeah,
Yeah.
to make it happen. But yes, so today you had to be like, I'm doing the whole thing, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
I'm doing the whole thing.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
and I do feel better because there's something very calming about it. And a lot of my morning ritual is skincare, but people don't understand that skincare, the touching your body, it actually releases the same chemicals as if someone was touching you. So if you're being hugged or caressed or massaged, you know how you feel good? You're doing that same thing just by doing the simple act of pressing, oral oils and serums into your body. And I do feel calmer afterwards. So, hey, here's where a little bit of vanity can actually help your well-being.
Yeah, for sure. That's great to know that the research says that it's the same, right? Because we talk,
Yeah.
there's so much research about like people who don't experience touch for so long or haven't,
Mhm.
and then so being able to provide that for yourself, self-care, self-love is, yes, it's not the same as getting a hug from a friend, but it's pretty darn close, and that's pretty awesome. That's amazing. Yeah,
Yeah, it's
I
tapping
didn't
to
even do my
stimulate some of
skincare
those.
today. I didn't even do it today. Like because it's the summer and we kind of like, my husband's on this kick. He wanted to watch these two different, they went to the Science Museum Space Center last week. And so he's like, we got to watch The Right Stuff. We got to watch 2001. We got all jazzed up about these space movies. And then I'm like, wait a second, we got to watch Apollo 13. We got, like I'm space camp.
Lost in Space. Lost in Space
Lost
is
in
so good.
Space.
The
And so
Martian.
last night was 2001.
Uh-huh.
So which I surprisingly stayed awake for the whole thing. But then I wound up sleeping in later tonight because, I went to bed at like
Right.
midnight, which isn't totally unusual for me per se, because I don't have great sleep habits. And that's part of what I'm getting to get better at my self-care,
That's what you're working on.
folks. One of the things. Yeah. So going to bed at midnight is not super unusual per se, but like really had trouble sleeping the night before. So this morning, like I got up just a couple minutes before 9, which is way late for what I usually do. So like, I just basically got set up. Of course I made coffee, to get here, but I didn't do my normal skincare. That'll happen. It's going to happen later. You know what I mean? I normally have walked the dog by now and all this. I shouldn't have to pawn that off on my husband. So yeah, I definitely already feel like today is like,
Right.
because of
Yeah.
it. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So, countdown to the school year. We have 2 weeks and 2 days. It was really interesting because my child is just going to be starting at a new school, she has been homeschooled her whole life. If you're just joining us for the first time, she's been homeschooled her whole life, and she's starting at regular school for the first time this year. And so we are now on the email list and the text list for the public school system in our area. And my phone is blowing up.
Get ready, girl. Because
My phone is blowing up.
It blows up. And yeah, just be, you will get to see the flow of like what's really important, what's specific to your daughter's school, what's just from the district, or
Right.
we we have we have bigger districts and then smaller communities inside this. I mean, it's complicated. Or like, there's a
Well,
lot.
because Natasha and I
There can be
live
a lot of
in,
communication.
well, Natasha and I are both in Los Angeles.
Second
And if
largest school
you,
district in the country,
right.
750,000 kids.
So second biggest in population, but it's probably the largest in terms of square miles.
Oh, for
because
sure. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Los Angeles is a flat, wide county, city. I guess
Yeah.
it's city district, right? Or county.
Mm-hmm.
Is it
It's city.
county?
Yeah, it's city.
Okay, city. And so it was interesting because today I got a text message for an event happening 1 hour away. It's still in our city. And I was like, yeah,
Right.
I'm not driving 1 hour for that.
Yeah, no.
It sounds like a really cool event, but I'm not driving an hour for that event. So that's
just heads
that's
up, girl. They
interesting.
give you heads up about events like the day before, where like it's just like you're like, well, that's, and it's like 3 o'clock tomorrow. You're like, that would have been super helpful like a week ago. You know what I mean? Like where I could have actually maybe made that event because you gave me enough of a heads up. There's a lot of that. So they're really more like reminders. Of course, there's, those events exist online in calendar form, but they don't let you know about it till the day before, kind of thing. So there's a lot of that.
Well, it's very interesting. I'm feeling the initiation into the membership.
Yeah.
So that's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm excited to go to registration and orientation in 2 weeks because, again, I've never done this. This is a whole new experience for me, for my partner, for my daughter. So
yeah, this is new for us too,
because
high school, the way they run high school is way different than elementary and middle school. So it's just, this is new for us too. I was like, oh, orientation is like legit. Like you don't want to miss it. Like, it's not just kind of like, oh, this is your school. Yay. Which is what it is like in elementary school. It's just kind of like, yay, we're so happy you're here. Join the PTA, in high school. And they're just like lockers, blah, 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 time, schedules.
Yeah.
You have, like, whoa, it's wildly different. So it's new for us too.
Yeah. And it was interesting because it's like Monday, seniors, Tuesday, juniors, Wednesday, sophomores, Thursday, freshmen, Friday, magnet school. So
yeah.
I was maybe you could just send me what's relative. No, that would probably be too much. But I was
no,
they could relevant to me.
Yeah, no. They would, I would, they'll miss it. You'll miss the information. They'll just, somebody won't make it on the list or whatever. That's, they just send it to everybody.
By the way,
they're like, you sift through it.
Kind of related topic, and definitely, in our lane in terms of planning. My child recently went to out-of-state camp and she had to fly there. And there was a COVID outbreak, perhaps not surprisingly, because people were flying in from all over. And there was no emergency plan for this eventuality.
At the camp, there was an outbreak?
Yes, at the camp, there was an outbreak.
Okay, gotcha.
And there was no plan for this eventuality. Or if there had been a plan written, it hadn't been looked at in so long that people were like, "Whoa, what do we do?" sort of thing. And I don't know exactly if that was the reaction, but based on the communication we received, it seems like they were on their back foot. And I just want to put it out there. Hey, you got to have contingency plans if you are hosting, especially if you're hosting minors who have traveled a great distance. Like you need a fire plan.
I'm surprised.
You need an earthquake plan. You need a tornado, whatever natural disasters might happen where you are. You need a flood plan.
Sure.
And you need a disease plan. So
especially
I don't know if any other
in this post-COVID world, you would think that would be, that would definitely be something that would be just in place, right? I think
absolutely. And especially in the wake of this whole CrowdStrike thing that happened, where so if you don't know the term CrowdStrike, what happened, I guess it was about a week ago now, where a software patch went out and it ended up taking down a whole bunch of airline industries and other companies. But Delta has still not been online, or they're struggling to get back online. And apparently at one point they completely suspended flights for unaccompanied minors. And guess which airline my child, a minor, flew on? Yeah. And so I'm so grateful that she didn't have to deal with that. But hey, Delta, you need a better unaccompanied minor plan. You can't just not
Leave
take
people
care of.
hanging.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
that's not cool.
So I'm definitely going to be getting, I already, in the survey, I already reached out to the camp and said, my child will not be attending this camp next year until I can read what your contingency plans are for any possible emergency. And hey, if you need help with that, I'm happy to help you plan that out.
You're like, I am a planning maven.
I am a
It's
planning
what I
maven,
do.
and I do enjoy emergency preparedness planning. I don't think we've ever talked about it on this channel, but
We
I have
haven't,
actually.
but that we'll put that in as a subject coming up.
Yeah, we should put that. I'll put that as a subject in our spreadsheet. That is something I've actually taught volunteer. I've volunteered to teach classes on emergency preparedness for groups in our area because it's better if more people are prepared. Being prepared
100%.
yourself is great, but everyone
Right.
being prepared is helpful. And so, yes, that was an interesting experience. I was like, how long has this camp been around? So anyway, that was a recent experience. So our topic for today, our fun, light topic for today is our baby making stories. Oh my gosh, who wants to start?
I want to see what you mean by baby making and how detailed you're going to get. She texted me this morning. She's like, hey, I was thinking baby making. And I was like, LOL. She's like, wait, does that mean you're cool with talking about it? So I was like, yeah, for sure. I am cool with talking about it.
I mean detail. No, I'm just kidding. No, I just mean like the generalities.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so you probably all won't be surprised to know that my baby making journey was very structured. So my husband and I were together for a long time before we felt mentally, emotionally prepared to have a child. And really, people around us had lapped us. Like there were people who had gotten married and had 2 kids, before we even decided.
In less time. Yeah.
Yeah, in less time. I mean, we were together for 5 years.
That's hilarious. I love it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we were together for 5 years before we got married. And then we were married for like 11 years before we decided that we felt we might be ready. And we were also like, oh, okay, like we're getting older. We got to get on this train if this is the train we want to be on.
Totally.
And so, yeah, so people were lapping us and people were, some people were very politely kind of skirting the subject of fertility, wondering if perhaps all this time we'd been trying and we just, were having challenges. Sure. And we were like, we haven't even tried. Like, we've been having fun. I mean, we had a fun, not that we don't have a fun life now, but like we had our system for like a fun year. It was like, okay, winter, we would go skiing. Okay, summer, we're going to go to concerts in the park and, go camping. And we were just enjoying that rhythm of our life. And then both of us had agreed that we both needed to want to try at the same time before we were going to do it. And what happened was one of my best friends came out to visit with her 2-year-old and 4-year-old. And they stayed at our house. And even though I'd had lots of friends who'd had kids, I hadn't experienced children in this sort of 24-hour way.
Yeah.
Before.
Yeah. Close proximity. Right. Nowhere else.
Exactly. Close proximity, and also parents who were kind of parenting in a style that I could see myself parenting.
Yes. Right. Totally. That makes a huge difference. It helps if you have that example.
Yes. And we had so much fun. Oh my gosh. And I remember the 2-year-old, it was so funny. We went out to breakfast one day and he was sitting right next to me. He was 2 years old. He shoot cheeks, and like my breakfast potatoes seem to be diminishing much faster than I am eating them myself. And like every time I looked away, he was stabbing one of my breakfast potatoes and eating it. And I was just like, Oh,
Adorable.
who
Such a
knew
cute.
larceny could be so cute? And that was hysterical. And
Oh my gosh, that's so cute. Yeah. No, right? Isn't it funny? You're like, oh, that's so adorable.
yeah. And so when they left, I said to my husband, I'm ready. And he
Mhm.
was like, I'm ready too. Let's do this. And so that was
Awesome.
July. That was July. Now, I just want to say one thing. Although we hadn't decided, we had been talking about the possibility of getting pregnant. And so, me, in my planning way, I had been abstaining from all seafood for 3 years because I freaking love tuna. I'd eaten so much tuna in the first 32 years of my life that I was like, like who knows what the mercury buildup or whatever. So from 32 to 35, I completely abstained from seafood. And I also did some cleanses because I was like, I want to make sure there's no mercury in my system before I get pregnant. And I did get tested. I didn't get tested before I started doing all this stuff, but I did get tested before we started trying to get pregnant, and I had no mercury in my blood. So,
Yes.
yay!
Yay.
Yeah, so I
If there
guess
was
it
any in
worked.
there, you got it out.
Exactly. If there was any in
Yeah.
there, I got it out. So okay, so at this point I had been abstaining from seafood. I had done a few cleanses, and now I was feeling like excited about the idea of getting pregnant. So it's July, and I said to him, "But I'd like to do one big trip before we get pregnant. Like one last, let's go out of the country." And there were some places that I'd always wanted to go. And so we were like, okay, let's do it. So we planned a trip for September, October time. So 3 months away. And I said to him, and I was like, and then as soon as the trip is over, we can start trying. Right. And he was like, what about on the trip? And I thought, well, what's the difference? Right. Like,
Yeah.
I'm only going to be fertile for like this teeny tiny window anyway. And if I get pregnant on the trip, who cares? Right. And it was
Right.
so funny because at the time I owned a store. And so my regulars knew that I was going to be going out of town for an extended period of time because I said, hey, I'm going to be out of town, blah, 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 blah. And I remember one woman was like, oh my God, you're going to start getting pregnant. Like, so what are you doing to get pregnant? Are you like checking your ovulation? Are you this? Like, she was very into sort of the technicalities of getting pregnant. And I was like, I've done this cleanse, I've abstained from seafood, but other than that, I'm just gonna, like, if it happens, it happens. And honestly, we have lived for so long without children that if it doesn't happen, we're okay with that too. Who knows? Maybe we'll adopt, you know? And she was like, that is so like laid back. And she's like, I'm not like that at all. And I was like, okay, well, we haven't even started trying yet. So I don't really know how I feel about this whole thing. Right. So.
Yeah. Right.
So anyway, we go on the trip, and we go on the trip, and we are in this little town, like tiny little village, no cars in this town, one little street. We're in Italy, and it's one of those. Literally, probably had a population of maybe 100 people, maybe 200 people. Tiny little town, and all of the grandmothers, you could see them every day sitting on the benches, just like gossiping to each other, talking all day long. And so one night I go to sleep, and in my dream, I'm walking down that little street in that town, and one of the Italian grandmothers grabs my hand, looks me in the eye, and says, "You're pregnant." And then I woke up.
What? That is
Yes.
bizarro for real. Oh my gosh, that's amazing. That's wild.
Yeah. And I don't remember if it happened before or after the dream, but there was a point where I was like, God, I feel like this weird pressure in this area, like in my lower pelvis. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. And so anyway, we get back from our trip, and coincidentally, my grandparents had come to town. And my grandfather had been fighting lung cancer for a long time at this point, maybe 3 years at this point. And I think he kind of knew that this might be his last trip to visit all his grandchildren, because like we saw him before we left for the trip, the Europe trip. We saw him, and then he went up north to visit my cousins in some other states, and then he came back, and so we were going to see him again, and they had to admit him to the hospital when he came back to Los Angeles because he had missed some sort of blood building treatment that he was supposed to do before he left his home. And now that 3 weeks had passed, it was starting to show.
Oh no.
And so they took him to the hospital, and we had been back maybe 2 days from our trip, and he was in the hospital, and I went to go visit him, and I called up my husband. As soon as I saw my grandfather, I called up my husband and I said, I think you should leave work and come to the hospital now, because I don't think grandpa's going to make it through the night. And ever since I'd had the dream, we were on the trip for like maybe another week. Like I was like, I'm pregnant. I can tell I'm pregnant. But the earliest I could test was like pretty much that day I was at the hospital. And I said to my husband, I was like, you should come. I'm going to go see if I can find a pregnancy test somewhere in this hospital. And I'm going to, because I want to tell grandpa if I am pregnant.
Right.
And shocker of all shockers, the drugstore in the hospital had pregnancy tests. Like I was like, that seems like a strange thing to carry, but cool.
Yay.
So I did the first and only pregnancy test I've ever taken in my entire life in the bathroom of LA County Hospital. And it turned positive like so fast. Like, you know how they say
you are
you have to
very
wait, like,
pregnant.
I
You're
was
like
very
super
pregnant. Yeah, I was very pregnant. And so I called my husband. I was like, we're pregnant. And I went in to talk to my grandfather, and he couldn't speak at this point. He didn't have the energy to speak. And so I whispered in his ear, and his eyes got so big.
Oh my goodness.
I know, just like talk about circle of life, right? Like
seriously. That's so nice that you were able to tell him that news. Yeah. It's so nice that you were able to tell him that news.
Yeah. So I do have one little thing that I want to add on to my baby making story, which is because I was a geriatric pregnancy.
I can relate.
Yeah. In the state of California, if you are 34 or 35 when you get pregnant, you have to do this genetic testing, which is good in some ways because, hey, like they'll give you resources if you need them.
Yeah.
So I had to go to a peri-neonatologist, right? So that's like neonatologist before. And when we started doing the ultrasound, he couldn't find my baby. And I said to him, you know, ever since the trip, I've been feeling this pressure in this one area. And I'm not kidding. He laughed at me and was like, you can't feel anything yet. And I was like, excuse me, man. When was the last time you were pregnant? Excuse me, person without a womb. And he put,
I mean, I'm sure it's unusual, but yeah. Go ahead. Sorry.
And she was right there.
I mean, shut it, doctor. Do you know what I mean? Like, you can just.
So, bam. There you go.
That's amazing. It's amazing that you had sensation that early, you know, and she was just very low in your pelvic area. Is that the deal?
Like she was very, very low. Like, I mean, not in my abdomen at all. Like the very bottom of my pelvic area.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Just like he couldn't find her. And I was like, well, worst case scenario, I'm feeling this pressure right here. Why don't you try there? And, you know, I think he'd been looking higher.
Right. Yeah.
And yeah. She was like way more close to like almost like the bone of like my left hip sort of thing.
Wild. So, yeah. There she was. Yay.
So trust your body, ladies. Your body knows things that you don't know you know.
Right? That dream. So wild. That dream. And then just like having felt the pressure, right? Because we know our bodies, you know. I mean, I think we also, you know, there's definitely sometimes you're encouraged to ignore it, or you've been told you're not feeling what you're feeling.
Mm-hmm.
That happens a lot with the women, right? You couldn't possibly feel it
You
that early
couldn't
in your life.
possibly,
Not
yes.
possible. It's not possible to feel it that early.
And again, when I forget, but like the vast majority of OBGYNs in the States have been male for a long, long time. It's like none
That
of
needs
them
to
have ever
change.
been pregnant.
Right.
So
It's like,
take
why are you the
there's a blind
expert?
spot there for sure.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not
Yeah.
saying
And
that they're not valuable, but there's a blind spot.
of course not. Yeah, for sure. And it's
Like
kind
I
of
would
funny
never
too, like when you,
tell someone, well, your penis can't feel that. I don't know.
I know, seriously. It's mind blowing. It's mind blowing. And you know, there's so many parts of the female anatomy are named after the doctors who discovered that. You know what I mean? They're different. It's named after a dude who
Well, it is
discovered.
pretty hysterical. I mean, I know men, MEN is a prefix for moon, right? Which is related to our cycle, but it is pretty funny that it's menstruation and menopause when
Right.
no
That's
men are going
true.
through
That's
it.
that is really funny. That's bizarre. I mean, my story is very opposite of yours in so many ways. So many ways.
That's what's
we were married.
awesome about birth
Yeah.
stories. I mean, baby
We
making
were married
stories. They're all
18
different.
months. Yeah. We were married 18 months, but we got married exactly 2 years into our dating, and we were married for 18 months when I got pregnant with my son, which was not planned, not discussed.
Surprise!
I mean, here's the thing. Yeah, it wasn't like we were, choosing at that point to be child free or anything. In fact, a few months before, I personally had never felt like a biological clock. I never also felt like, oh my gosh, I want to be a mom no matter what. Like I was just kind of like, we'll see kind of thing, So never really felt a clock situation.
Right.
At most, I was kind of like, so also mid-30s, right? And all of a sudden, I was like, there's a clock in the room. Like I know there's a where it's here, but it wasn't like ticking. It wasn't like on the mantelpiece,
Right.
like ticking. I'm just kind of like, there's
Like
a clock.
you were aware of the clock.
Yeah, suddenly, but in only like the last few years, like leading up to, I was all of a sudden like, oh, there's a clock here somewhere, but it wasn't like. And then one day I did start to. I don't know if I started to panic in that I was like, well, here's the thing. It's like, it's not that we have to have kids. We don't have to have kids. I just want to know, are we having kids? Because if we are, that's cool. But like, and if we're not, that's cool too. But if we are, then we probably, so all of a sudden that clock got louder, right? So I was aware of its presence, but I was also not completely dead set on like, I absolutely want to be a parent. Like we should be parents, I was not, I was like, but if we do want to be parents, we should decide very shortly. And I was kind of like in this spot of like, so are we or aren't we? And my husband was like, let's just pump the brakes here for a second. Because it was a very frantic kind of energy of like, we got to make this decision. We got to make it right now. You know what I mean? Like, and he was like, of course, because the men don't have the clock. So he was like, let's just pump the brakes for a second and like wait till maybe you're not feeling so frantic. And then we can like really kind of discuss it instead of it being like this kind of frenzied feeling. Again, a man who doesn't have a clock, not feeling any pressure because, he could be 80 and still become a dad. So,
yes.
So I was like, yes, that's probably wise. Let's just pause this discussion altogether and just wait till like maybe I've just chill out a little bit. Who knows where I was in my cycle when I was feeling that too? Like, who knows? Right. And so we just kind of paused it. And Allegra and I met at the same church. So I actually just sat and prayed and I was just kind of like, okay, let's just get me out of this crazy making state. And I was just kind of like, I'm going to just really sit and we're just going to see how it goes. Like, we'll see how things happen. But we were still using protection at that point because we were not actively trying to have a kid.
Mm-hmm.
And then that protection failed. But I was convinced at that point that like I had just, my period had just finished. So I was like, oh, I'm like at least a week or so away from ovulating. Like I'm nowhere near ovulating and stuff. Well, I was wrong. So At that time, I didn't really track my period like I do now with an app and stuff like that, right? Because perimenopause, it's like, when is it coming? Is it coming? I don't know. Is it supposed to be here? Is it late? Blah, blah, blah. So at that time, my cycle had always been not, I was never a 28-day kind of person. And at that point, I'd taken myself off of birth control for years just because these side effects were not agreeing with me. So we used physical contraceptive, which failed. Yeah. So
which is rare because I've never had a
condom.
condom fail. Just want to throw that out there.
Yeah, right.
And
up until then, I think,
and only took one pregnancy test in my entire life, so never a concern.
Yeah, like right. I think it only happened. That had only happened to me one other time where there was a fail. But I was so convinced that, like, I was like, oh, it just ended. Like, we're totally, it's not, no need to, like, we're not, And then my period was like a little late, and I was like, well, that's normal. It's never exactly on time. And then I was like, no, it's kind of really late now. So took that pregnancy test, and yeah, it was positive. And surprise prize. And my husband was wicked on board. He was like, what? Yeah. And I was like, I was like, do we really want to do this? I mean, we didn't really discuss it. We didn't like make a decision. We didn't like actually decide. Like,
he's like, you were just asking me about this. This is
true, but we didn't. We decided to table.
Right, you didn't decide. Yes, you
right.
decided to table.
But then after that first initial panic on my end, I was like, well, you did pray and you did say, I'm going to release it and let it go, and then if it happens, it happens. I'm like, and so it's happening. So
there you go.
Bada bing, bada boom. You know what I'm saying? Like, get down with it. And so, yeah. So that initial kind of like hyperventilating only lasted like maybe 5 or 10 minutes when I finally was like, you prayed on this and you got your answer. So
there you go.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So the lessons from art, because I love hearing when I was working on getting pregnant, or actually when I was pregnant, I read a lot of birth stories because I just found it interesting to kind of familiarize myself with the breadth of with the range of experiences. Mm-hmm. So I feel like there are a couple things you can take away from our stories. For mine specifically, after the fact, I've learned actually that like cleansing and working on being in good health is actually important for your body in terms of getting pregnant, because like when you're healthy, your body's like, oh, okay, well, I have the capacity, I have the space to give to supporting a pregnancy. So, those weren't things that I did on purpose, but afterwards I was like, oh, that might have helped why we got pregnant pretty quickly. The other thing is that being relaxed, being on vacation is being stressed is something that will tell your body now's not a good time to be pregnant. Mm-hmm. So, hey, being on vacation and also being laid back about the process might have been helpful. And then the third thing is that apparently caffeine makes sperm swim faster. So being in Italy and giving my husband all those espressos supercharged his sperm.
Like, wee! That's hilarious. Yes. That's so funny.
So that's what you can learn from my story. And from Natasha, I think praying and releasing it.
Yeah, for me, but that may not be the thing for everyone. And I'm not, and that's clearly like not like the most, like you're not like making, pluses and minuses and, and like weighing out your options and stuff like that. But for sure, I'm super happy with the way that things turned out. And then with our second son, we were much more deliberate about it. We're like, okay, let's try. We were, as soon as you have your first kid, people are like, so are they going to have a sibling? Like almost immediately. It's so crazy, right? I'm like, please, no. And I was like, can't even think about it. And then our son was about 2, and my husband and I were like, well, if he's going to have a sibling, like we should probably get on that. And we were both, that was wildly different. We were like, yes, we're going to do this. We're going to try. We're going to, specifically try. And I think we tried for like a month and we were like, bam. So yeah, fertile, in that regard. But yeah, so it's both ways, was very,
again, it's just the range of experiences. Take what you want.
Right. Yeah.
Huge range.
They're right. So many different stories. So everyone has a different story. like you said, it's very interesting. And I too I had been doing cleanses and so forth for years, like not necessarily to get prepared for pregnancy, but yeah, it's just kind of like flushing things out.
Yeah.
I'm a fan.
Well,
We
thank
hope
you
we'd
for
love to hear
joining us.
your stories, and please,
Yes.
jot in your stories. Tell us how things are going for your countdown to the school year. And we'd love to hear from you. We'll see you back here on Thursday morning, 9:30 a.m. Pacific, 12:30 p.m. Eastern.
Dream wild, wild.